Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Absolutely.
Create a culture where people can thrive. I think that's probably the number one job of a leader.
Welcome to Owning Your Legacy podcast. I'm so happy to have you. I would love to hear your story and how you ended up where you are.
Yeah, the journey. I mean, it's just
The
the journey
journey.
of life. What a trip. Thanks for the opportunity to share it. So, I mean, really rewinding, I actually started out in nonprofit and I was so passionate about it. This was before I had my two kids, Christian and Isla, who are now 7 and 10. And I was actually living in Northern California at the time. I had just developed Cache Creek Foods' first website. I was like fresh out of college. And I got this email from a friend who I now co host a podcast with, my friend Allie Smith. And it was a job description. And she's like, Christy, I think you should apply for this. And I read the job description, and it was literally as if I had written it myself. It was exactly what I wanted to do. And essentially, it was an education, a nationally replicated education program that was headquartered in Los Angeles to teach kids about sexual health and healthy relationships and media literacy. And I was so passionate about it. So before they even offered me the job, I was like packing my bags to go to Los Angeles, literally. And I got the job and moved to LA and had a great run there. But after having two kids, I was like, okay, this has been amazing. It's time to move back to Santa Barbara and out of Los Angeles. And I need to, probably get a job where I'm going to make quite a bit of money. And I didn't really get to that point until 2 years later when our youngest, Isla, was 2 years old. So I took a bit of time. And so when I decided it was time to get back to work, I've always been a mom who likes to work. I like to have that going. That's just my personality.
I agree with you.
And
Yes.
I think parenting at home is probably the hardest job in the world. Like, when you're at work, you
Yeah.
can have a
Yeah.
latte anytime you want and go.
Yeah. And I think also I was talking about that with someone earlier this week about the structure. I had a really hard time with maternity leaves because there was no structure. And like Oprah was my guiding light. And if I got a shower before 9 a.m. and got to watch Oprah, that was a good day. It was a good
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, the shower before 9 a.m. That's definitely like you're doing really well.
A shower in general, when I
Yeah.
was like, that's a good
Yeah,
day.
for sure.
I found it really hard too. I agree with you though. I think some people are meant for it and some aren't. And that's just
Yeah,
fine.
absolutely. Different personalities. So when Isla was 2, I decided, it's time for me to go back. And this time I want to get basically the highest paying job I can. It sounds silly, but I was like, growing family. And so it was really serendipitous, but a good friend of mine who's in leadership development, who I eventually ended up doing coaching training with, invited me to come visit a company called Procore Technologies, which went public a couple years ago. It's headquartered in Carpinteria, amazing CEO. And I applied for a few positions there and ended up becoming an executive assistant on the CEO's team. And from there, yeah, and
Nice.
from there went into revenue operations and corporate program management on the corporate strategy team. That was about 3 years in. And I loved it. I was like climbing the corporate ladder and learning more than my brain could fit inside of it, and started working on like international go to market strategy, sort of program management and company OKRs and things like that. And this was in the heart of the pandemic. And, I was working probably, I don't know, 10, 12 hours a day. And I had this,
Damn.
yeah, I had this,
It's
it
a
was a
lot.
lot. It was a lot. It was like get up, work. And this wasn't like
And two young kids at home. That's good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's probably something more of an expectation that I was putting on myself, but it was just the grind I'd gotten into. And so I actually just had this epiphany of like the pandemic. I mean, people were dying. And
Yeah.
I was like, is this how I want to spend my life? What if I don't have that much time left? None of us really knows. And so I had this major soul searching moment. And I decided it's time to, my heart's not not in this anymore. I need to make a change. And I really wanted to leave on a high note because I love the company so much. And so I decided an opportunity came up with a family business, and I decided to join the family company leading business development and to pursue my coaching accreditation. And so that is what I did. And I'm so happy that I did. It was probably one of the best decisions that I could have made. And I think that my background in tech, moving into the food space, was a perfect fit because.
It is a good fit. And so how many years ago was that?
So that was about 2.5 years ago now, 2 years ago. So yeah, not that long ago.
So talk more about the family business and like who else was in it and how that, because I love those stories
Yeah.
because got some myself.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So my grandfather, who really was like a father to me, I mean, really helped raise me, was so involved in my life. And he started Cash Creek Foods. He was like a serial food entrepreneur. So after World War II, he's from a super poor family in Kansas City, Missouri. I think his dad was a barber, and feeding like
Cool.
7 kids, I think, were in his family. And so when he was a little boy, when his sister would get her paycheck, she would take him out to get milkshakes. And that was like the big
Aw.
splurge. And he developed this passion for food at a young age. And so after World War II, he came to California and started launching food companies. And one of those companies was called Shade Foods. And
I know Shade Foods. I remember when Carrie bought
yeah,
them.
yeah. So I think at least a couple of the plants are still in operation. And so I grew up, in the food business.
And I love your story. You got to talk about when you were little and running
Oh
around
yeah, running around in
there.
the cocoa plant. Yeah. And yeah, I got to go on a tour of the plant. I was so excited because to me it was like, this is Willy Wonka and the chocolate factory. I'm going to go and I'm going to get the biggest haul of chocolate ever, and I'm going to, come and stash it in my room. And so I'm like going through the plant and I'm stuffing cocoa powder in my pockets, and I get home and my mom's like emptying out my corduroys, like, I never did.
And like you would think it wouldn't even smell or she wouldn't even
Yeah,
notice.
yeah, exactly. She's like, I told you it wasn't going to taste good. I was so disappointed. It was so bitter,
Oh, that's so
the
sad.
straight cocoa powder. But yeah, it was a great, great childhood. And so my grandpa actually retired after selling Shade Foods, and he bought an orchard out in Cape Bay Valley, beautiful walnut orchard, and was living farm life, and he just couldn't stay away from business. So he founded Cash Creek Foods in 1993 when he was pretty old at that time. And
So in his 70s, it sounds like, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's brave.
yes, very brave. And I think he had a vision for high quality tree nut ingredients for the food industry. He'd always been in the ingredient side of things. And so that was the inception of Cash Creek Foods. And my dad took it over in the early 2000s. And that was really, the early 2000s was kind of around the birth of almond milk. And so,
Ah,
so
yes.
Cash Creek Foods helped a lot of multinational brands bring their first almond milk to market, and we've been innovating in the space ever since. Yeah.
That's cool. And so did your dad have a lot of siblings? So, how did that transition happen from your grandfather to your dad?
Yeah, my dad is one of nine
Wow.
kids. My stepdad, but he's my stepdad. And so he was
Uh-huh.
really big into real estate and development. And we also had, when I was young, a working ranch here in Santa Barbara. So a really fantastic, actually, it was a working cattle ranch. And we took great care of all of our animals, and it was a really wonderful childhood. My dad also
Oh, that's
decided
good.
that he was ready to, branch off from his family of origin business and take on a new challenge. And my grandpa had been a mentor to him and saw, what a great businessman he was. And so my dad was willing to take on the challenge and really, really made the company successful.
That's very cool. And then, okay, so then fast forward to you. So your dad's been running it for the last 23 years or so. And you said you're one of six,
I'm one
right?
of six.
So how did
Yeah.
How's that going? Like with family
Yeah, it's
and
great. I mean, my brother, who probably would have been the natural person to take it over, is in law school right now, at Iowa
cool.
State, and
Everyone needs a lawyer.
everyone needs a lawyer. So we're super proud of him, and he's on that path. It's a perfect fit for him, and we have an amazing. My other younger brother is like great with his hands, and he's helping with like operational things and mechanics and all that type of stuff. And then we have an amazing president. His name's Justin Smith. He's really a servant leader, I would say, is his style. Also has his MBA, and he's a genius and great with people. But so he's our
Beautiful.
president now and runs the business, and then I oversee sales and marketing, which is a really great fit for me. So it all worked out really well.
Yeah, it's hard to transition a family business. I mean, so many people talk about that, and um, even having my 5 boys, it's like, what's next with that, and they're big decisions of and letting people do what they love and shine. It sounds like that you guys have kind of figured that out of putting people in the positions that they really passionate about.
That's so well said. Like I could not agree with that more. And I mean, just thinking about, for those listening today, like, we're talking about purpose before we hopped on. And
Yes.
I think that that is one of the keys to really living a purposeful life in whatever industry you're in as an emerging or established leader, is making sure that you're using your gifts and that you're enjoying the process of doing that. And yeah, so well said.
I love that. And I think it's the most important thing. My mom often says that she was a therapist. She's 89 now, but she said the hardest clients she ever had were trust fund babies that had no purpose and didn't need to work. And like they're the most troubled people and really struggle with mental health and depression. And I think you said it perfectly that, yeah, purpose is hugely important.
Huge. And it's so funny that you say that because there are moments where I'm like, well, actually, a nice, big, huge trust fund sounds awesome. Let's go on vacation for a year.
I could do it if I had to. But
Yeah.
we say that, but we probably couldn't. I
Yeah.
want to touch on the man in the arena because I know that means a lot to you, and I don't know that. I read it, but I want to hear more about why that moves you and what you think about that.
The man,
And you could even read a like. I know you might have it like right in front of you on a plaque or
I
something.
do.
I don't know,
I
but
have it right in front of me.
I love that. Okay, so read a little
Yeah.
bit of that, or what
That's actually
part you
one
love.
thing that I wanted to make sure I had handy. Um,
Oh,
so
good.
this is a poem called "The Man in the Arena." It's by Theodore Roosevelt. Um, it's from 1910 in Paris. So
Wow.
it is.
In Paris.
Yes,
Ooh, I like that.
Paris. Yeah. So here it goes like this. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
Oof. It makes me teary. That was good.
Isn't that
That was
good?
good. You're a good reader. Wow. Yeah, that's really good. My dad always gave me the If poem. I don't know if you know Rudyard Kipling's If, when all about you lose their heads and you maintain yours. I'm gonna have to send you this. I'm
Send it
sending
to
you
me.
this.
Yeah. What's your favorite
And
kind of piece of that poem?
of the one you just read, I think it's around like don't talk shit if you're not in the frickin' arena. Like if you're not in there, you have no right to judge, to comment, you can't just be a bystander. and then critique somebody else's work. I often feel that way, even like sitting in football games, with my boys, like you can hear some of the parents get like, crazy, particularly the dads. And like,
Yeah.
and
I'm
like,
one of the
and
crazy
probably
ones.
particularly critical of their own children, quite frankly. And it's like, you get out there and do that.
Mhm.
Easy to sit up here in the stands and say whatever you want to say. But so I love it. I mean, that's very moving. And I think I loved the last line too of fail and get up.
Yeah.
I think that's hugely important. And I think that is a great note for listeners and especially emerging leaders. That's one of the most important things. Don't be afraid to fail and get up.
Mm,
It's better to fail than not do anything, right?
yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
I don't know. What would you say is your favorite for like, or advice from that for listeners? Because I think there's a ton in there.
there's so
Ton.
much. There's so much. I mean, my grandpa had a poem and he used to quote this to me so often that I actually memorized it. And essentially it was, don't give up. Don't give
Hmm.
up. I mean, when things seem the worst, maybe we can link this in the show notes for folks. It's a poem called Don't Quit.
Yes.
But essentially it's like
It's called Don't
don't
Quit. Is that
quit.
what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like when things seem worse, like that's when they're probably about to get better. Like don't give up. You might succeed like, with the next thing that happens. And I think I was talking to Isla about this the other night. My daughter Isla, she's 7 years old. She's playing ukulele and she has had a little gap in her lessons since summer and she didn't want to start up again today. She starts up again today. I'm like, Isla, why don't you want to play ukulele? You're great at it. You're writing songs. And she's like, it's just so stressful. And I said, Isla, you're in the middle. You're in the middle right now. When you start something out, there's the excitement of beginning, and we have this sort of unconscious incompetence. And then we work at it and we work at it and we get to the middle, which is also sometimes known as the pit of despair, when we no longer want to
Yes.
continue pursuing this
Yes.
thing that we have set out to do. And, it's the unfun part where we're building the competence that we're now aware of. We go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. And then we go to conscious competence. And so I think
Hmm.
in my own life and journey, that has been so important for me because in the past, I had this tendency to make progress on something and not see it to completion. And, there's always different scenarios in our life. Like for one person, sometimes knowing when to quit is a good thing, right?
True.
You don't want to
True.
be beating your head against a wall when actually the right thing to do. And I think that's where, the mindfulness that we were talking about earlier before we hopped on is so important. That mindfulness as a leader and some of these practices that used to seem kind of woo woo, we're now seeing them a lot more in corporate culture, you know.
Definitely mainstream. Absolutely. It's important.
It's important, yeah, so that we can tap into really what's going on, inside and tune into that inner voice that's going to help guide us and direct us forward in the right way instead of being reactive.
I love that. And I think that poem your grandfather would share with you, the Don't Quit one, is I was thinking about, the biggest lessons in life always happen just as you're describing, right? When it's going to start getting better. If you can muscle through those resilient moments of your life, that's the ones you go back to lean on for learning. I would love to hear your beliefs on leadership because I really enjoyed learning about you and what you think about that. So where you feel you are in terms of a leader and maybe even how you weave your coaching into that.
Gosh, it's interesting. I'm really passionate about development. And, you know, I used to think that I really wanted to be a leader. And I think I am a leader. I naturally sort of lean into that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the more that I've seen what good leadership looks like, the more I realize that it is a process. It's a never ending development
Yes.
process. And
Totally agree.
and
A
the
learning.
learning and the best leadership that I have seen recently really has to do with working to serve the best interests and elevate the team to do their best work. And a lot of times that means sacrifice on the part of the leader, right? Like I saw a great little example in action the other day. Woodland can get really hot. That's where we're headquartered. And in the summer months, it gets really hot. And there's this really nice sort of covered parking area. And, Justin could have taken those spots for himself, or at least one of them. But instead, he chose that the employee of the month and the manager of the month would each get to use those spots. And it was such a
I love
simple
that.
thing, but it really spoke a lot to his character. And I think that, I think,
Servant leadership. That's exactly how you described him, right? Yes.
yeah. And I think that character in leadership is probably one of the most important things. I also saw the leadership style of my dad, and it was his leadership style is very different, but he also had that servant leadership aspect to him where he was, really thinking in the best interests of his employees and how he could help them build, success. And I think for myself, that's the journey, right? I mean, some of the things I think about in my own path that I've had to overcome and am working through now. I think as leaders, we all have to come face to face with our insecurities and our shortcomings.
Oh, totally. Do the work. I think I've read you said that a lot. Like, you got to do that work. And I would love to hear more on what that work is in your opinion.
I think there's this quote, and it is, know yourself to lead yourself. We must know
I love
ourselves.
that.
And in order to know ourselves, it takes a lot of intentionality.
I think a good therapist too.
Everybody does.
I'm a great therapist.
No, I
Everyone needs a great therapist. I strongly believe that. A good coach, circle of trust, good
100%.
to go.
Have you ever done a circle of trust where you're in the warm seat and you bring a situation and the folks in the room ask questions?
No, I've never really done that. So say more on that. So you sit in the middle of a circle?
So, I mean, there's so many different mechanisms for this. Coaching for me has helped me get to know myself so much. So have some of my spiritual practices. But a lot of this has to do with cultivating presence, getting quiet, identifying the negative voices, that can take us down the wrong path, and we can cut them off more quickly if we know what they are and what they tend to say to us. They're usually developed during childhood. And so back to your point, therapy, coaching. So circle of trust is cool. It's actually a very old Quaker practice, but people now, it's been adapted and people do it in coaching settings. And what it is one person, I actually just did it on a coaching supervision call earlier this morning. One person brings a situation or something that they're processing through, they share it with the group, and then the group just simply holds space and asks questions. And the belief behind it is that somewhere inside, if the person can let their soul speak, they're going to know the right direction to go, or they're going to get what they need simply by having that space be made for them. And so take that forward. I think for all of us, we live in this world where we are constantly bombarded with media and noise and hecticness.
I agree. And trying to find that quiet space to even hear your quiet voice inside is really hard. Do you have a ritual you do like in the morning or anything in that where you get quiet or meditate, or what's your morning ritual look like?
In the morning, if I can take a few minutes to not dive into email, to check my inbox, but really just lay in bed for a minute. For me, prayer is really powerful. There's some ancient writings that I really love in Psalms and Proverbs that are actually in the Bible. I love to go to that ancient wisdom, um, and just sort of ground
Mm.
myself in what really matters. Because, and then meditation is a great practice. I mean, when the world is spinning round and round, if you can get in a place where you can sit still, get in a posture, a seated posture that's comfortable, and just breathe. Just breathe for
Hmm.
4 minutes, and then come out and journal
Yeah.
about what's actually important in that day. I mean, all of us have 4 minutes.
I have a little 5 minute grateful journal that you just write like three things you're grateful for. You know, what would make today a great day. It literally probably doesn't even take
The
five
five
minutes,
minute journal,
but it does. I love the 5 minute journal.
the best.
Hey, did you ever read? I'm totally skipping around here, but Authentic Leadership. You talked about authentic leadership, but I didn't know if you meant the book. Did you mean the book? Have you read that book?
I haven't read the book, Authentic Leadership.
Oh, I have a crazy story of that book. I had just gotten through we call it the redemption. I ended up buying, after my dad passed, buying out my siblings and 20 of the grandchildren. So buying the business, more or less. And it was 2 years of negotiation over price, just hard stuff. Um, and it was April Fool's Day, 2012. I remember it specifically. And you would have thought I would have been like elated. And I was like blue that day. Like it was just a melancholy is maybe the word I would use. And it kind of surprised me. But so I decided to clean my room.
What else is there to do? How easy makes you feel better.
Right. Like clean your room when you're in. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. This will make me feel better. And I was moving these books off this bookshelf in my bedroom, and literally one dropped off the bookshelf and opened. And in the book was my dad's writing. And it said, beat the drum holy, play the pipe. No, wait, no. Beat the drum slowly, play the pipe holy. Is that the quote? I have Googled the shit out of this quote to figure out what the hell did he mean. And he had signed it, and so he had given me this book years ago. Do not remember him giving me it. And it wasn't like the man gave me a ton of books. Like, why did I have no memory of him giving me this book? And he wrote in it. So the fact that it jumped off the shelf and opened to that page so that I knew it was from him, I'm like, oh my God. So I got to read the book. A fantastic book.
Yeah.
I'm going to send it to you. You're going to love it because it is really good. And it's around a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about and
Yeah.
servant leadership
Yeah.
and just so many messages. But I felt like he was seriously
Yeah.
banging it
Yeah.
over my head from
Totally. He's like,
above,
here you go. Like, I see, here's this book today. Oh,
There
that's
you
like,
go. Mm-hmm.
that. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. The thing, the signs, and the thing that comes to my mind as you're saying that is, Brene Brown, she's
Love.
just what you're talking about, authentic leadership. The thing that comes to the forefront of my mind is letting ourselves be seen.
Hard. Not
Totally.
easier
But the
said than
kicker
done.
is people see us anyway. Like they either get to see like the true,
Right.
authentic, which is the best version of who we are, or they get to see the part of the version that's trying to hide who we are, which is way worse because they see all the flaws
Way
anyway,
worse. Way
So
worse.
I think that's such a, great reminder of just, hey, show up, be yourself, bring what you know
Mm-hmm.
more than you think you do. And I love what my
Yes.
coach, he's totally like my coach guru. Like he just appears
Yeah.
in like the points of my life when I need him. John McClure. Shout out to John McClure. Amazing guy. And I was having this moment where I just felt like I don't know enough. And he's like, well, then switch your mindset. What does it look like to be the best learner? And that was such a relief.
Ooh.
Like, I can be the best
Love
learner.
that. Yes. And you don't need to know everything, right?
Well,
There's somebody out there who wants to know stuff and wants to be the expert at that. That was an aha for me of letting go of the fact that I am not. So the word we use at Edlong is the integrator. It's traction, mindset, terminology. I love being the visionary. I love big relationships. I love culture. I am not the detail gal. And just let it go. Somebody else loves the detail. I don't. I need somebody like that, but it doesn't have you. We can't be everything. It's impossible.
What a great revelation. I mean,
Yeah.
that is so amazing. And how much did that like release you and make you more effective in your work?
It was huge. It was huge. It was a huge revelation. It took me a good 30 years to get there. So,
And one other thing that comes to mind as you're saying that is like one of the things I know about myself is that I work in sprints. So I go really hard and then
yeah,
I need to pull back and recalibrate and reconnect. Then I go really hard and then I need to pull back. And I know that about myself. And so I give myself permission. You know what? I just worked a ton Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm actually going to take most of Thursday for me because I need a minute.
exactly. Exactly.
And it makes me so much better. And I get these creative ideas that then I can take back and, invest back into work from my rest.
Yes. It's very important. And like, I have a little plaque in my RV, funny enough, that says something like, you know, don't, oh God, I can't remember. Something like, don't promote the hustle, or like, don't, it's something about making busy look good. Like, stop that. Like, it's not good. Like, there's no need to, you're no cooler because you're busy. It's like, really, we all just need to like chill a little and take it a little slower and enjoy the
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah. And
Totally agree.
get that focus back in. Like,
Clarity breaks is another part of our attraction thing that I am horrible at taking these, but the importance of them is like drilled into us of you really need a clarity break where you and no phone, no computer. It's like pen and paper. And you got to put everything else down and just start drawing stuff, it's amazing what comes out of those. And I need to do those more often.
so is this something that you've sort of integrated into your culture long?
Yes, yes. So it's kind of like an execution process is what I would say. So EOS traction, it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. Kind of takes the best of the books like Good to Great, Covey, and created just a system around. We have a facilitator that helps us. So I love it. It's amazing. It's changed our life.
Yeah. Yeah. Invest.
I'll share more with you on that. I'll let you know.
There's that quote. I'm an English major, so I love all the quotes, but culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Absolutely.
Create a culture where people can thrive. I think that's probably the number one job of a leader. It's where I've fallen short in my journey to becoming an effective leader is because I'm somebody who likes things to be excellent. I'm always going to be looking at how they can improve. I'm always going to, and so, hey,
Yes.
that's great. But how do we create for you listening today? How do you create as a leader a culture where people can thrive, a culture where there's accountability, boundaries, freedom, right? All these things. The only way to do that is to be grounded and
Yes.
centered in that in your own body. Why? Because science and research shows that the attitudes and moods of leaders are contagious. So how you authentically,
Totally.
like you're saying, Laurette, show up, that's the culture you create.
Yes. And it's to be protected. Absolutely. Because I would love to hear of a time when you've been in a culture or seen a culture that's been hurt, but almost every time it's divisiveness that I see that gets really toxic. That once there's like a us and them, I feel like the power is in the unity. And believe me, I've learned this lesson a couple times, but and sometimes it's hidden. You have to uncover what's going on. I can feel it before I can really see
Yeah.
what's going on. So anytime you've ever been in a culture that you felt was just like, oh, this isn't good.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we all are like the funny thing about people is we're people. Like we work is
Hmm.
not some alternate universe where all of a sudden we're like aliens. We come without our feelings and our faults and we're just boop, 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 ba-doop, right? Like produce. That is not how it goes. Like work and leadership and all these things, it's relationship driven. I mean, that's what I enjoy the most about work is the relationships. And so I think anytime you're in relationship, there's going to need to be, you know, critical conversations, and then bluntly just straight up
Yes.
forgiveness, because sometimes even after those critical conversations take place and we have a better shared pool of meeting where we've invited voices into the room and we've made sure everybody's had a chance to be heard, that still doesn't fix everything. I think at the end of the day, we have to give each other grace for, hey, I see your strengths, I see your shortcomings, and let's do the best we can together anyway. And then having that integrity as a leader and the boundaries, like I'm an empath, like, John, my coach John, who I mentioned earlier, he literally has nicknamed me. At one point he did empathy in a hat. I used to always wear.
It's hard to be and I've also heard the term intuitive sensitive, because I'm right there with you, and it gets us to our core. We can feel
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. And being sensitive is not a bad thing, but you got to know when to have boundaries and to say, hey, I don't absorb the feelings of everyone else here. So anyway, all of us have our own challenges and need to find our own balance. And I think that's where, that's where a lot of the magic is.
I just heard I'm a podcast, listen to many of them, as well as do this one, but I always get something really good out of everyone I've ever listened to. I eat them up. But just heard one last week. It was Simply Be, Jessica Swags. And she was talking about the difference between boundaries and sovereignty. And then she read the definition of it out of the dictionary, and it was so much less, I don't know, isolating. The word boundary is very isolating, but sovereignty is like having power over yourself. It was good. It got me thinking. It really got me thinking of it. I like that, because I struggle with boundaries, and I don't even like the word. So then maybe I just have to change it.
No, I love it. I love sovereignty. The idea of, It also, you know what it does? It creates something that I think is one of the most important things in life. And Jocko Willink would agree with me.
And what is that?
Ownership.
And you talked about that people hate to say the word, was it struggle? Like, we don't talk about the struggle.
It's so true. I mean, somebody from your team actually asked me the other day, it was such a poignant question. Like, where do you struggle? And the knee-jerk reaction to where do you struggle is like,
I don't struggle.
You feel it in your body. Where do I struggle? Talking about where I do great. But where do I struggle is actually the thing that usually connects us, because we all, when you boil it down enough, we all struggle with many of the same things.
I love that. Where we struggle connects us. Ooh, that's a quote. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about like the balance of a leader, where it's like, you do have to have sovereignty, and you do need to be intentional about who you share things with and how you share them and when you share them. You have to own how you show up. And at the same time, you have to be willing to be vulnerable in ways that are, positive and good for the team. So
it truly can get lonely. I think that's never to be underestimated, that all of that, you definitely need to have the places where you can just be yourself and with your girlfriends or whatever, because it's a lot. I mean, leadership is a lot.
Back in high school, a friend's mom said to me, Christie, it's lonely at the top. And that was such an encouraging comment at the moment. But to your point, Laurette, what has been the most helpful for me is to have a supportive community around me, which I found through friendships and coaching and other things, to have a place where I can come and just really be honest and have that support, and then be able to take that, into other areas of life.
I think that's such good advice for any listeners. That's hugely important, and you really need that. And I think I'm thinking of like advisory, or mentoring circles that you have, that, and also listening to other people's struggles. It's like, oh, I'm not alone. They're going through the same thing. Is really helpful.
Exactly.
I think we're ready for our last question, because I've taken a lot of your time, and I really, really appreciate the conversation and you taking so much time and good stuff. You're a wise woman, and definitely learned a lot from this. So, as usual, and this is coming, so I would love to hear, what is the legacy that you would like to leave behind?
You know that I spent a birthday uh, journaling in a cemetery a couple years.
Yes. Yes. And I get it.
I've
I
always loved
totally
that
get it.
idea though. Like, whenever I go to like Europe, like, and I'm in Paris, like I always want to go to the cemeteries and like drink my latte and get reverent and think about
Oh,
like
that's
ages past.
cool.
And it just puts things in perspective. And the number one thing that came to me during that time that stays with me now is what kind of a legacy. I want to live a life where I'm not thinking about what I can get from this world. And this is convicting just saying it because it's a constant journey. But what can I give? What can I contribute and leave
Ooh,
behind that's going to have made this world, a little better and a little more beautiful? And mean, when I was walking through that cemetery, it's like some of the headstones are these big grand ones, and you can tell that maybe those people were really, successful by material standards in life. And then there's some really humble ones. And on the really humble ones, there's some really amazing words like beloved mother. There's even ones from infants
ooh,
that were only alive for a short period of time. And with the angel wings, and that was such a treasured life that made a huge impact while it was here. And so I think for each of us to really think about what is my purpose now, what can I give to the world, what are my unique offerings that I have, and then how can I put those forward in the most genuine way possible.
that's beautiful. I love that. So
Me
nice to
too.
meet you, and really have enjoyed our conversation, and we're gonna stay connected, lady.
Stay connected. I would love that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.